Hey everybody, this is Nick Morell with Audio Video Export. It's a pleasure to be able to have you all here with us today. For those of you who are watching via the webinar, via the YouTube link, thanks for clicking in and logging on. Unfortunately, you can't see GoToWebinar doesn't allow us to be able to record our cameras. With us, I'm here in sunny South Florida with Alex, but we're in different offices. He's in downtown Miami, and I'm over in the AVE offices in our new facilities. But I just wanted to say thank you, a special thanks to you, Alex, for spending your time here in order to be able to go over this really important information. We're going to be talking about the Mxa system and Dante, a little bit of Dante, and a little bit of networking, and some of those fun things that go all kind of hand in glove. And it's really exciting. We had a great time doing this in Spanish a couple days ago, and I'm just appreciative of the time that you've dedicated in order to be able to do this for us and for our customers.
Oh, it's my pleasure, sir. I'm a geek, so I could talk about this all day.
Without it, me too. You and I mean, we were just talking for the last half an hour about geeky stuff, and it's a good time, without a doubt. Again, if you can see the cameras, I'm on a pair of SRH 440 headphones, and I've got the MV7 in black. I think Alex, you're on the MV7, but in silver, right?
I am, yeah. It's the exact same mic, same capsule, same electronics inside. These were the two colors that were originally launched with the MV7 when it came out. Just real quick, if you want to talk about it,
Go for it.
before we get started on the MXA stuff, because it's one of those things that if you want to like up your game, your podcast, or if you're at home, if you do scratch recordings or demo reels and stuff like that, this is one of those mics that I really started enjoying. What you were saying that we did the Spanish one a few days ago, I was actually working from home, and at home I have my personal one that I purchased. I purchased the black one only because, microphones should be black. It's one of those
I
things
agree.
for me.
It should be.
It's
Yes.
you have you have a 58 that's a black mic with a silver grill. That for me, that's what a microphone should be.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
these are cool. The silver's kind of growing on me now. And now we have different like customization options. So you could actually have the body colored, the yoke colored differently, and you can have it all custom made for your taste. If you're one of these podcasters and you want to brand everything with your colors, that's pretty cool.
Well, I'd like to find out more about that on another time for sure. I didn't even realize that we could
Yeah,
do that.
yeah.
But
Go to
oftentimes people see like
shure.com.
the
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
people oftentimes see like the SM7, which is the
Uh-huh.
SM7B, which is a famous one,
Oh yeah.
but they don't realize that you have to have a 60 decibel preamp. That's right,
Yeah.
60 decibel preamp
Yeah.
in order to be able to get that to work properly.
Yeah.
Whereas the advantage of this, getting the microphone, not only do you have the XLR output on it, but you've also got you've got a headphone jack and you've got your micro USB on there. So
Yeah.
this plugs, it's got a digital to analog converter, or an analog to digital converter rather, built into it. And then it's got a really neat software that's really easy to use. You don't have to if you don't want to use the software. It works right out of the box, but literally it's just plug and play.
It
And that
is.
USB is two-way, which allows me to plug my headphones right into the microphone, and
Mhm.
I can hear everything that's going on, which is awesome.
Which is actually, I believe that's the same way you were routed as well. I have my headphones connected straight in, and it's zero
Yeah,
latency. It's it's not something latency. No, it's zero because it's the analog
yeah,
path that's getting fed back to me. Um, on
yeah.
real quick, what you were saying on top of that, with the built-in XLR and USB DEC that's on the MV7, they work in parallel, so it's not like an either or.
Hmm.
So if you want to record into your computer and your podcast and everything via USB, awesome, great. You could use that Motif app that you were saying, so you could adjust it, make it sound more of a SM7B. You can make it sound brighter, so on and so forth. Tone it to you. But at the same time, you could go out XLR into like a little Tascam or any recorder, and you have a backup. You literally have a backup of your entire
Yep.
recording, so you don't have to worry about signal drops and you completely lose your connection. You it's good. You're good. You're
It's
safe. You're
awesome.
fine. You're fine. Yeah, yeah. And
It's
it's one of those
awesome.
people
And then
don't
you can go
realize
into a
how cool.
mixer and you can do that
Yep.
if you got like a radio station or whatever. And
Yep.
you can, it's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. A lot of people actually
So
do it backwards. If you have multiple MV7s, we also have the MV7X that doesn't have the DAC, but a lot of people are buying multiple microphones. They're going into a standard mixer with a USB out, mixing multiple channels and then going into
Yep.
the computer so they could have their whole show, interviews, whatnot. And they're going analog in. But what
Yep.
people are also doing, they have a separate laptop with the USB recording the USB. And
Yep.
the USB, same thing. It's 24-bit, 48K.
Yeah. My wife actually, she does Zumba classes online. She's a Zumba instructor, and so she has a very similar setup where she's got, we have a digital mixing board. It's an analog mixing board with a digital output USB
Yeah,
into the computer so
yeah,
that she can broadcast it. So it
yeah,
works really flawlessly
yeah.
doing it either way. So I know we're geeks. We could talk about this kind of stuff all day long, and that's not the purpose of today's webinar. Sorry about that. I hijacked us.
No, it's
But
fine.
yeah, so it's your show, man, and thanks so much for being on here. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm here.
Mhm.
I'm gonna turn my camera off just so people don't get distracted with me picking my nose and whatnot. But go for it, man. All yours.
No worries. Well, again, thank you everyone for joining us today. What we're going to be doing is just a quick chat reviewing our ecosystem for our integrated system side. This will be everything that you are going to be needing for the meetings to go in, you sit down and have your Zoom meetings, everything's changed within the last 2 years. And now everything really is digital presence. And we decided it was time to step it up. So there's a couple of things obviously you need to do your design and your setup and whatnot. And the first one obviously is your project. Afterwards, you need a good microphone. Luckily, I'm sure it's been doing that for a few years, 100 actually. Afterwards, we need some sort of DSP or processor. Um, after that is connected, you need some way of controlling everything. And lastly, you need a way to transfer everything from your digital back to your analog. And in this case, will be some type of speaker system. All that together is what we call the Shure ecosystem. Real quick, just so you guys can see it, this is what we're talking about. In the room itself, you would have the project, you have the microphone, your processor. These we'll talk about a little bit more in detail when we get to it because we have options of hardware processors as well as software processors now. It's one of those things that we realize that people are asking for so they could have um, the dedicated computer that's going to be running the video DAC to actually run the software itself. So it's one less piece of gear in the chain. It's also a little bit more cost effective. Your controller, we have a physical controller that we just came out with. You'll see that in there called the Mxa Mute Button. Does a little bit more than just muting. And then we also have our system on, which is our software dedicated for monitoring all the live pieces of gear that you have in the room or any of the rooms if you have multiple rooms if it's a larger setup. And of course, our brand new MXN speaker, which is our Dante-enabled self-powered speaker. So the Shure ecosystem is a complete and audio solution. It is covering everything that we spoke about from for your I/O, from entry to output, and it allows you to go to one company you trust for every type of solution, from small, medium, large, all the way up to conference center events. If you'd like to even get to that type of setup, going through what each one is of the components for the project, we have a software called Designer. After this is where you will be able to bring in virtually your AutoCAD drawing. From there, you could design using all the speakers that microphones and peripherals that we offer and build your room out. This is where you could also do your routing. In terms of the microphones, this will be the actual microphones that we offer for the system itself, which are the 310, 710, 910, as well as anything else that could be coming down the pipeline. From here, we go into the processor, and this is the software, the IMX room. This is a standalone software that I was saying that we could put into the computers now, as well as the P300, which is our hardware processor. Everything uses the same algorithm, which is something that we get asked a lot. So the quality of audio still stays the same. We are not compromising quality just because you rather have a software setup rather than a hardware setup. From here, you would go to the controller set, which in our case would be the Mxa button that I spoke about. You could also map it to be a command using command strings. Doesn't necessarily need to be the mute button. And then the system on, which is that software, which you can monitor, mute, check battery status on your, yeah, if you're using one of our wireless microphone systems, so on and so forth. And lastly, the speaker. We'll get into that detail in a bit as well. And I'm going a little fast. It's just a quick overview. We're going to be going into the little details soon enough. So if you guys have any questions, if you have any comments, please feel free. Be more than happy to talk about any of the components or anything that that makes the Mxa line really the top of the line system for our integrated systems. One of the reasons for that is because of the next generation type of design that we've got. We wanted it to be sleek. We wanted it to be, yeah, if I could say it, in an office setting, even a little sexy. You want it to blend in to your setup. You don't want it to stand out like a sore thumb. The microphone you see on the bottom, that's our 310. You could have that either on top of a table, it's about an inch thick, or you could even put it embedded onto the table. We sell kits, so you could have it completely embedded, so it's just a small dome that you see. Not a hockey puck like some other other companies that I've seen. It's, again, aesthetics plays a huge game for us now, and it's something that obviously at Shure we've taken into consideration and we've designed to be the case. The microphone on top is our flagship. That's our 910 Mxa 910, and that completely disappears into a ceiling tile. If you're doing a flush mount, you could always do it as chandelier setup. We could do what's it called, the airplane wire hanging, which is kind of cool too. It's kind of modern. I kind of like that setup. But if you don't want it seen, you don't have to have it seen, which is pretty cool. What made it also the next generation will be the power of our steerable coverage. And this is part of that IntelliMix that I was talking about, where you're able to tell the microphone where to look at, and the microphone itself will be able to set up and listen to those specific areas in whatever room and setup that you're looking for. Just going through a couple of the bullet points that I've already spoken about. And that brings us to the Mxa 710. This is our newest speaker that we came out with in the 710 lineup. It is available in 2 different flavors, so you're able to do either a 2-foot or a 4-foot. Most people enjoy putting on walls, although we've started seeing a lot of people hang it from ceilings, almost like a light fixture or like a chandelier type setup over the table. And we've created a software to adjust for that, so the microphone knows its orientation, and we're able to adjust the lobes for that coverage for that. The Autofocus technology is available in 710 and the 910. This is where the microphone is actively seeking out whoever's speaking in the room, and will zero into that person, even if the person is walking around the room. It's the closest thing to getting an NFL shotgun microphone with a satellite dish following you everywhere. Obviously, the physical limitations will be addressed in designing the room, and you'll be able to almost walk the entire room and have complete coverage as if you were wearing a lavalier or a handheld. Obviously, it's not direct like a lavalier or handheld, but the coverage is absolutely great. We're going to be talking about it in a little bit when we go into the IntelliMix room setup, because the 710 and the 910 come with IntelliMix software built in. So it does the DSP and the processing on a standalone as well. But the auto echo cancellation, the noise reduction that these systems create is second to none. It really is. I've had a chance to listen to everybody else, and I've yet to hear somebody that sounds as natural as the way that our processes work. And I've seen Nick and I can attest to that because we've been talking about this. We've set it up in rooms, full air conditioning running. We set up the noise reduction, and it's literally like we went from an omnidirectional microphone to me talking to you here right now.
The
It's
isolation
almost that,
is
yeah,
really
yeah.
impressive. There are a couple of videos on the Shure for anybody who's curious. There are some videos on the Shure YouTube page
Hmm.
that go over that type of isolation specifically. So anybody who wants to be able to see that in action, you can actually see it hear it in action, and see it in
Yeah.
action on their page. So that's awesome.
It is. It's. And I'm going a little off topic, but it's one of those things that you really have to listen to it to actually believe that it's really processing the way it does. It's almost as if you spent 3-4 grand on noise canceling material around your room. It's not perfect. Nothing is perfect. But what I've seen these systems be able to filter out, properly set up and managed, is short of amazing. It really is. It could turn, for example, our office here has all glass meeting room. Being in Miami in a high rise, they design and make it all pretty. Obviously, they don't have AV in mind. It's all glass all around, and going in there, it's like walking into a hollow fishbowl. The reverb is, it's almost 3/4 of a second, and then the fan noise from the AC from industrial building at the end of the day. This system completely cuts it out, and it's not just a 710; it's a 910 as well, and it's really cool. And obviously, if you're using their P300 or the Intelli mix room software, all that's built in as well, so you can get any microphone that we offer, send it through Dante, send it through the processing, send it through the auto mixer, and you'll be able to get that same quality of sound. Getting back into the actual presentation, the 710 comes with the wall mounting bracket. Like I said, it's the way that most people install it. Although we also offer different installations kits, so you could actually embed it into a table that you see on the bottom. And then if you're going to be doing more of a mobile or a rental setup, you could set it up to receive a microphone stand as well. For banks, these are the people that usually require the most security. It is AES 67. Everything is through Dante, including PoE, and then the audio itself, excuse me, with all the lobes. The way that it works, it's the 2-foot has 4 lobes, whereas the 4-foot version has 8 lobes. And what we mean by lobes, if I could go back for a second, is that coverage, that blue area coverage. Each one of those would be a lobe that the microphone system itself can adjust. You could make it wider, make it shorter, make it longer, just depending on the coverage that you need. And in Designer, you're able to go in and uh, cover the area that you need to, and that way you're telling the system where to look for the auto mixing and the autofocus technology.
So in a practical sense, what we're doing when we're focusing those lobes, we're just telling the speaker, hey, pay attention to this area,
Mhm.
ignore the other areas, right?
Yeah, yeah. And the cool thing about those are all active lobes, so you're able to, even if you move through to from one lobe to another, it's completely seamless. They do move and they do follow you, so you'll always have coverage. And even if you are already talking in a lobe and you walk out, the system will follow you. The lobes themselves are to start gathering your information, but then if you move out of that way, the system knows, it's smart enough to know to keep following you. If you continue speaking. These photos that you see here, this is a couple setups that we found that people are really enjoying. They're almost setting it up like a sound bar, if you would, where you put it on the bottom. It's completely invisible, of a like a flush mount, depending on the monitor you're using, and then on top you have your PTZ camera, depending on pick your poison at that point. The chandelier hanging that I was mentioning is this one. People just hang it from the top over the desk to get a little bit more of a direct sound. We are able to steer the lobes in such a way to still pick up all the chairs around you. so you don't have to worry too much, especially with the new Intelli software processing, keyboards clanking, papers rustling, stuff like that. The bottom picture with the wood grain, that's a different setup for embedding into a table. You don't necessarily have to use it just on a table. You could also use it on a wall, but just so you have an idea of what it looks like when it's flush mounted. And that brings us to the IntelliMix that I was so happily talking about. Gives us the three types of available options. The hardware itself, meaning the standalone P300 mixer, the embedded into the system itself. Here you'll see it on a 910 in the chandelier mode. And then the third one, which is also our newest one, would be the standalone software that you put in the computer. We recommend that you put in the same computer that you're running your video codec from, so everything is together in one computer. So you could actually have one less piece of gear. If not, you're just replacing one hardware for a different one. And in itself, a lot of the reasons that we like it so much is because of its intuitive nature to use. That photo you're using is Designer, and afterwards that would go through all the gear. I'm going to show you a live demo of how Designer works, how you're able to route stuff in, and I'm going to show you one of our larger designs that I've done to help out our clients, where we use multiple 910s, multiple speakers, and multiple even mute buttons to create an ecosystem for that client itself. Oh, this one's left over from the Spanish one. I'm sorry about that. It's true. The IMAX Room software does start a new era. It is easier to deploy. It's a lot easier to route, seeing as everything is routed directly from the same computer you're already using. You don't have to worry about any additional form factor. Everything is through the Dante protocol. So at the end of the day, it's just one Ethernet cable. The businesses, the reason we say it's ideal for business is because you're able to scale with it. It allows you to buy software rather than a piece of hardware that could be firmware and software upgraded, and you're not worried about chip shortages. You're not worried about whether you bought enough channels. And if you decide that you want more channels in the future, it's as easy as buying a new license rather than buying a whole piece of kit. This brings us into the Mxa Mute Button. Again, I'm calling it the Mxa Mute because of the official name, but remember that we sell different options. So you could have it without the mute button logo drawn on it, and you could have it programmed so you could run a simple command, like a yes or no function, through command strings for the button itself. The button, the way that it looks like, is like that, where only the very top piece is what you would see exposed on the right hand side, and on the bottom you see that's where all the processing and everything works, all hidden, everything, like I said in the beginning, aesthetics. We're paying attention. You guys want it to look professional, you want it to look modern, you want it to look clean, and this is something that we continue to just to strive for and make sure that we're able to do that for everyone. The button itself, you're able to configure it using, again, our designer software. You're able to route it the same way. You could either have it working globally or locally. Most people, if they just choose one, they'll have it to be global mute on or off, and they'll have it placed usually where the president or the head of whoever's running the meeting usually sits, so that he or she could have control over the microphones. A lot of examples would be a bank, and that they need to mute if they're talking something sensitive and they want to come back to the meeting and continue. Everything is managed through the system on, so you're able to have your IT or your AV department monitor everything, including the status, and they're even able to give you or take control depending on how we set it up, of the mute capabilities of it. Again, everything's PoE powered, and it is compatible with the third-party control systems. Again, using the control on the command strings. So if you program a command to have it run a scene, you could actually have it set up with the button. So in this case, instead of having it on the table, we've seen some people put it on walls, and they've embedded in walls. So let's say the president of the bank comes in, they want to have this meeting that they always have. They run certain gear, they run certain setups, they come in, they press the button, and it runs the command for them, almost like a scene. Then the LED status light on around the ring. Any questions so far before we continue to the loudspeaker?
No, everything's been flowing smoothly. I forgot to mention that. Thank you for saying something.
No,
For
no
those of you
worries.
who are here in attendance, there is a question box. So if you've got any questions, please do. I did have a question, but you ended up answering it. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we're flowing smooth so far.
Oh, no worries. This brings us to the MXN5. This is our newest development in the MXA line, which is our network loudspeaker. In it itself is a self-powered, networkable speaker you just install onto your drop ceiling again. Really quick, it's pre-tuned, it's self-powered. Again, everything through PoE. It's designed in such a way that you're able to have two ins and one out via Dante. So we're able to cascade, again, everything via Dante from one to another if you're running multiple setups. So you don't have to home run everything all the time. The system itself allows us to set up for whatever needs the client is requesting. For example, and one of the reasons that we decided to come with this to market is for the for hospitals, where hospitals are asking to have a way to communicate globally throughout an entire floor, or or even through the entire building, if they are having issues or they need to make some type of announcement. That's where we would have. That's why we have the two different inputs in case they need to make an emergency announcement. They're able to go in through the secondary input and speak over everything globally. And whereas the first input, you could set it up in such a way to be the local room or for that meeting that you're in. Another setup that we're seeing um, will be in conference room setups or in office buildings, to have the secondary channel to be a music channel that you could route. Again, if you're running the IMX Room software, you're using a computer for your I/O for the Dante, you could run the audio, you could run music from that computer as an input via Dante into all the secondary inputs of your MXN5. The speaker itself has EQ. You're able to have delay if you're doing a cascade, built-in limiter. And one of my favorites, it's the fact that it actually has signal and tone generator. So if you're using it to calibrate an external DSP or an external processor, you could run signal or excuse me, you could run tone through it, and you're able to calibrate that EQ on that third-party processor analog, the way that I like to, using my ear at the end of the day. Same thing as all of our other MXA. It runs seamlessly through our system on audio software. You're able to run audio encryption through it, and you're able to design rooms that work in an ecosystem where you're able to manage and just have the overall building be part of your own network. So you're able to configure, you're able to route, you're able to manage all from that one laptop running system on.
I may have missed it, but what's the size of the woofer on this?
It's 5.5, 5.25, 5.25,
Yeah, there it is.
13.3 centimeters. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that a lot of people they want to use this more for a foreground But I think that based on the fact that number one, it's a 5.25-inch driver, but also because it's being driven by PoE plus, right? So we don't have anything more than 30 watts going to it.
Yeah.
It's probably safe to say that we're looking at either background music or just voice. We're really looking at voice here is
Yeah,
what it's
it's
designed for.
definitely not front of house. um, the and I'm sorry if I misled when I said music. It's always the idea would be to have soft background music playing. It is designed and it is tuned to be for voice reproduction, not necessarily the best for music reproduction. Doesn't mean that it's not good for background music, but it's not designed to play loud music or to play movies. This will not replace a home theater, for example. This will not replace large front of house systems if you're using it for a large presentation, just two speakers. If you're using this with a wireless handheld to make general announcements and stuff, like, yeah, it works great, but we have to configure it in such a way that we're able to work within the speaker's means. It is a two-way system. It's a two-way driver system, but at the same time, you have to take in consideration that being a 5-inch woofer, you're not gonna get that high SPL from just one that you would get from a big PA speaker or anything. I believe the total output or the max output will be 102 dB, which is still loud. Don't get me wrong, it is loud. So I like to stay between 80 and 85. So the way we design it is to make sure we have 85 dB coverage along whatever area we are designing or whatever area the customer is requesting coverage for.
I think the other important consideration here, all of that being phenomenal information, but the other important consideration is because we're powering these devices via a network switch. Obviously, I'm going to talk about the brand that we carry, which is going to be Luxel.
Hmm.
Luxel is fully Dante enabled. We've got Dante networks running on Luxel for some time now, and it's been a phenomenal switch that has been used in a wide variety of applications. But while the individual ports may all be enabled for PoE plus, that does not mean that the power bank on the Luxel switch or any other switch for that matter, regardless of the brand, will support PoE plus on all ports simultaneously.
That's correct. Yes.
So,
Yep.
you may have a PTZ camera, security camera that's pulling 30 watts, but you may have another uh, PTZ camera that doesn't need all 30 watts. So whenever we're doing this, it's not just a matter of the design in the actual work there. You may have to use a secondary switch because the overall power on the it's called a power bank available on the switch itself may not support as many as we might need. So that information is freely publicized, available on all switch spec sheets and whatnot. So just make sure that when you guys are quoting this or when you're designing a system that we've got enough switches, assuming that more than one is necessary, and you budget for all that.
Yeah, and that's one of the most important things. Again, when we're helping design or when somebody calls you, Nick, to help design, we need to know as much information as you can give us. We need to know what's running, what's going to be in the room, what the usage is going to be in the room. Um, we don't want to sell you guys something that's not conducive. At the end of the day, your client won't be happy, and it's going to come back, and it's a back and forth. We want to try to help as much as possible. Yeah, we're all in the business of making money and but the customer is happy. But that's the important part. We're here to make them happy. We need to make sure that the client is able to express their content and their message as best possible. And that takes us to a couple of demos of the room setups that we kind of generally do, depending on a small huddle room, medium, large, and then all the way up to a classroom size. Whereas we begin with a small room, you would see the setup to be a single 310 on the table, This will be going to the switcher that, like what Nick was saying. From here, that switcher is also managing the computer that is running the IntelliMix room or a P300. These are completely interchangeable. The PTZ cam, and then one of our speakers to run the digital back to analog. So we have the full ecosystem set up. Again, everything, no, you don't see everything is clean, no wires, everything on the table is immaculate. The system just integrates seamlessly with everything. The 310 has a built-in mute button, so you're able to mute it just by touching the 310 itself. And then the 310, we're able to position the microphones with those lobes, just like its big brothers, the 710 and the 910. The big difference being that the 310's processing power is obviously a little bit more limited because it's designed for smaller rooms. From here, we would go to more of a medium-sized room. And this is kind of where we see most setups occur. Here we have a 710 on the wall. We have a mute button on the table. This time they decided to put the computer and the processor on the table. This, I would probably recommend the P300, so you're able to connect it via USB to any laptop that would come into the room, and then that laptop itself would be your video codec that you're going to be using for your Zoom meetings, etc. All this again goes to the switch, PTZ camera, and then being a slightly larger room, we would probably recommend 1 to 2 speakers, again, depending on the coverage. When I go to the live demo for the designer software, you're going to be able to see rings along the speakers to show dB loss for each one. I personally like to design my systems to be no more than 6 dB loss in between speakers. Again, that's a me thing. Right, and then moving on, we have a larger setup. This is more of a larger conference room, larger boardrooms where we are moving away from the 710s and now we're going to go into a 910. In this case, it's a dual 910 setup. This is going to be for a much larger type of boardroom. Most boardrooms usually just take up one 910 for up to 15 to 20 people. Same setup, mute button, the computer set up on the table itself, where it will be probably a P300, so we could connect whatever laptop and whatnot. Everything running to the same switcher, and then you could see the connection of the MXN speakers itself for that coverage for those larger for those larger rooms. A very similar setup would be if we're doing something along the lines for a classroom or a type of like a teacher setup. In this case, it would look something like this, where we would have the 910s on the side of the students. Obviously, we could configure the lobes to either take into consideration or ignore where the presenter or the teacher will be, and then the speaker system over those as well. If this were my personal design, here I would recommend that the client adds a wireless handheld or a lavalier or even a gooseneck to that podium, and that way they could be directly mic'd for the Zoom classes or the courses that they're going to be using. Any questions so far?
No, but the geek in me, I'm with you, man. When it comes to wiring things in, I just want to wire things in as much as possible. I know that
Yeah.
sometimes there's a convenience factor of putting in a wireless microphone for that presenter up towards the front. Again, it's definitely convenient, but if I have the opportunity to be able to wire something, I want to cable it up personally.
Yeah.
It's the only guaranteed way, unless a rat's chewing through it, to make sure that signal is getting where it's
Oh,
supposed to be.
I'm with you there. A little quick side note: if you want to run a hardwired microphone into our system, that's not a problem at all. If you're doing your setup with a P300, the P300 has analog inputs designed as well as outputs, so you could go in and out that way. Or you could even do one of our ANI Dante boxes where you could go a Danny, an Annie in. Try saying that 3 times fast. An Annie in, so you're able to go from analog XLR input into Dante protocol, and you're able to route that microphone into your Dante network without any issues, and it just becomes just one more input.
That Annie device and the
Mhm.
P300 are really unique for those people who are unfamiliar with it. The P300 not only does it do the IntelliMix, but it also has exactly like Alex just said right now. It's essentially think about it like on a highway, right? So your Dante is your highway, and it has inputs and outputs which are on ramps and off ramps into and out of the Dante network. So by having that device there, whether it be the P300 or if you need additional ones, the Annie in or the Annie out, because you need more, you need to put them on a different location. That's a little bit further away. You really have an easy way to be able to on-ramp and off-ramp audio going into and out of the Dante. Now, the other advantage of Dante, and this is not a limitation by any way, shape, or form, it's actually a huge plus, is of Shure, is that because Dante is agnostic as it relates to manufacturers, if you needed to be able to bring this into a video conferencing solution with a matrix, like so we were doing a design not too long ago where we needed a couple of these Mxa 910s in the ceiling, and we needed to be able to process that audio in Dante, but it was a dual. So take this exact what we're seeing on the screen, but put two screens on it, right? Put two projectors on it. Now, a computer could do that, but it'd be a little bit complicated. But in this particular case, we had a video conferencing, which was acting as a computer, and we had various different source inputs. So we needed essentially a video matrix.
Mhm.
And we've got an AMX device that does those multiple inputs, multiple outputs, accepts the Dante digitally without having to run a new cable to it because it's all over the network. So we're using the MXA 910s, we're using the P300, and we're all sending that mixed Dante into the AMX matrix, and it all just works.
Yeah,
And it's flawless
yeah,
and it's a beautiful thing. So it becomes really easy for you to be able to scale the system, whether you need it larger or smaller, with minimal cabling required. I mean, we're talking about one extra cable per device that you need back into the network switch. And again, so long as the power bank supports it on the network switch, you're good to go. It's gravy. You just add and add and add.
yeah. I've fallen in love with Dante. That idea, just in the pro audio side as well. You're able to run, instead of running snakes, you run two Cat 5 cables or Cat 6
Yep.
cables. Uh,
Yep.
It's amazing the bandwidth that we're able to gather from Dante. We're able to do. Obviously, there's a little bit out of our scope of what we currently do, but for sure at least. But you're the way that you're able to run high def video, the way that we're able to incorporate routing for us for audio, it's just made life so much easier for everybody.
We've
Everybody, and
got
it's a simple IO too. It's so easy when I'm teaching, when I'm doing my demos, or when I'm training other integrators, or other people, or even when I'm doing this. Just the idea of teaching just simple IO, everybody gets that. Before it was almost if and then matrices. If you've ever taken C or C++, and you don't have to worry about that anymore. It's literally just, you want to go from here to here. It's in out, or it's that simple. And if you ever get a chance, well, I hope so, that to play with the Dante controller to manually route stuff, and for example, when you're using third parties hardware that's also Dante, that's outside of the Shure ecosystem, instead of using Designer, you use the Dante controller, and Dante controller is your matrix, and you're able to run everything in and out, in and out, in and out. So you're able to route all these systems and all these microphones into your P300, and then you go back into Designer and you go into your P300, and now you're able to auto mix them, you're able to EQ, you're able to compress, you're able to route in and
acoustic
out.
echo
Yeah,
cancellation,
yeah, everything. You're able to have the AEC, you're able to use the noise reduction.
ducking, limiting. It's
Yes,
it's a
yeah,
beautiful
it's
thing,
it's
and
amazing,
it's all network.
and it's on network. You don't
So
have to worry about connecting the proper cable, because physically the only thing you connected was Ethernet.
Yeah, I think you're going to talk a little bit about the Shure Audio Institute in a little bit and how some of
I
the
am.
requirements
Yeah.
are. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely for those people who haven't done any Dante certifications, it is so worth it. I've done level 1 and level 2. Level 3 is a little bit more advanced than I care to get into right now. Level 1 is, if you've been in the audio video industry for some time, level 1 Dante, if you know some basics of networking, should be easy. Level 2 is when you start to really get into the weeds, and so you need to know a little bit more networking, but it goes over everything, and it's really intuitive and it's really easy. But definitely recommended, and I know it's required for some of the certifications for sure.
Yeah. For a level 2 certification, which we're going to get into now that we're done with all this stuff, let's have a little fun. I'm going to go into our live demo. If you guys just bear with me 1 second, I'm going to get out of PowerPoint. Love PowerPoint. And open up designer software so you guys could see exactly what I'm talking about. And we're able to do a couple of adjustments. I'm going to be able to show you if you guys want the processing and the EQ and the routing and everything that I was just kind of geeking over. And
Just so you know, on the screen, we're still on the demo
yeah,
PowerPoint.
yeah. I'm just
Okay.
loading up the designer software and opening up the room and whatnot. So yeah, just bear with me 1 second.
So the other advantage of Dante is that some people think, well, for a video conferencing or latency or what happens if I've got an issue, depending on how complicated of a switch it is that you're doing, it
Hmm.
shouldn't be a problem. At our church, at my church, we're using Dante in order to be able to send audio from the mixer to the amplifiers, which it's not a great distance. It's probably maybe 300 feet
Hmm.
away maximum, not probably even a little bit less than that, which is about the limitation of a network cable anyway. And it's all live audio and it's all in real time, and the latency is non-existent
Yeah.
for received audio. So
Yeah.
it's a phenomenal system that'll handle line level without any issues whatsoever.
It's one of my favorite words that people used to use. It's negligible.
Yep.
And as much as I hate to use that word, it really is in this case. It
Yeah.
really is. So a lot of people are like, oh, you can't tell the difference between this and that. Like, yeah, you can. You can tell the difference between Coke and Pepsi. Just saying.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Just saying.
Pepsi's sugarier, sweeter.
But the delay with Dante isn't.
I think
It
the
really
maximum
the
delay,
delay.
depending on what it is that you're talking about, is around 20 milliseconds,
Yeah, and to
which
and to get to that, you have to be running like
a
4K
lot.
video on the
Yeah.
same network with like 30 something audio channels.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's really
It's a
difficult to
lot.
get there. On
It's a
on
lot.
average,
Yeah.
you're doing between 1 and 2 milliseconds, again,
Yeah.
depending on the complexity of your network.
Yeah.
And 1 to 2 milliseconds is not audibly perceived. You can't hear it.
Yeah. So what you guys are seeing here is the main page for designer. I just clicked on the project itself so we could see it. And what we're going to be seeing is a slightly larger design that I helped do for a VW in Latin America, a conference center that they wanted to do. What we see here are mute buttons that they wanted. You're going to see why there's so many of them. We decided to go with 4 Mxa 910s. Then we're doing the IMX room software for the overall processor. And then the system, we did 6 MXN5 speakers. If we go over to the coverage map, we're able to see the overall coverage with the CAD. I know it's a little weird when you see everything like this, so let me go ahead and turn off the coverage so you guys see one by one what I'm talking about. In this case, the client wanted to have a multi-use room that was actually quite large, and they wanted to mostly have their board meetings um, set up and they could talk to everybody. They didn't want any microphones visible, but they did want to be able to locally mute the microphones if need be. So what we ended up doing was in each of these tables that you see here on the top left, we installed an Mxa Mute Button. And then what you see here, these themselves are the lobes for the coverage that we were talking about earlier for for each MXA 910. And if you see, I'm actually moving them in real time to get the coverage needed to cover that table. These are large. And if you come over here, you can see the properties. I could even make these narrower if I wanted to be even more specific of the space that I'm covering. Again, we found that they ended up getting up and moving around a little bit here. So we did the lobe coverage just a little bit larger for the initial pickup. From here, you could also see the speaker system that I was talking about. Let me turn off the 910 so you can see it. You guys see it a little bit better?
Yeah, it looks nice.
Okay, so this speaker right here, the center point is the N5 speaker. The very first ring you see, that's 3 dB of loss, whereas the second ring is 6. Although most people could handle 9 to 10 dB of loss without too much of an issue, I personally prefer a 6 dB overlap coverage. Again, it's one of those things that it's like a me thing, but it does allow for even distribution of sound, and you don't have to stress the system, and you don't have to push it if you would. A lot of times audience members or even the board members themselves, if you have everything too spaced out, you're starting to get some type of phasing, which in this case what's going to happen is your frequencies are going to dip and it's going to sound weird. You're going to lose your bass, you're going to lose your mid-range, so you're not going to talk as nice or as angelic as you could have been. And that's where this setup comes in. From here, you're able to adjust everything independently. You're able to adjust the EQs and whatnot. As we go back to the 910.
Sorry about that, Alex.
Yes, sir.
I'm assuming that when you import that drawing, that background of for the coverage map,
Mm-hmm.
that the software is asking you for dimensions so
Yes.
that it's got a reference to find
Yeah.
out, how far it
This is kind of
actually
cool
is.
about design. Yeah.
Scale.
Well, this again, going back and forth. In the actual trainings and everything, when we import the photos, you'll see that the system after that you're able to draw to scale. So
Right.
it won't automatically adjust to scale, but when you bring in CAD, there's always stuff that has scale writings on it or whatnot. And with the designer, you're able to physically draw a line from one point to another and tell the system the length of that line, either in feet or
Gotcha.
in meters. And
Gotcha.
from there, you're able to, the system automatically configures itself and will readjust
Sure.
the size of the end of perspective to be that size. So when
And
I
then you put
say,
the height of the ceiling in as well.
yes, sir, yes, you do.
Yeah.
That way, you know exactly what the coverage is, you know exactly what the angles are, you know exactly how much or how little coverage you're going to have in a certain space. So when I say that I am confident then that my 1910 is able to cover the entire presidential board talking without an issue, I could confidently say that because I've seen it to scale in the system, completely processed, and I have overlapping lobes, which to me is amazing in audio because that means they are able to get up, they're able to completely move around, and they are not tied down by a gooseneck microphone on a table like most boardrooms or most
Yep.
of these conference rooms are. It's more natural, and they don't have to lean in. They don't have to, worry about pressing a button. They just speak naturally. I wanted to go back into the routing page, so you guys could see, and I'm gonna go into the IMX Room software, so you guys have a quick look of the way that the system is set up, so you can see the routing. Again, we are live, so just bear with me while it loads. This being the 16 channel setup, you'll see the 16 microphone and Dante inputs. Here we have the automatic echo cancellation, noise reduction, and gain control. From here, you will see the auto mixer. And then everything, like I said, it's just so easy to to just visually see, even if you're not used to routing audio, everything comes in left to right. So this is our input. From here, you could set up an EQ, you could set up an echo cancellation, you could set up your noise reduction. From here, everything goes into the auto mixer. The auto mixer, we're able to open it up. You guys could see it there. We are able to set it up in such a way that we could say how many maximum channels are open at a time. We could set up the delay, for the gating. We could set up the compression. We could set up every parameter that you guys need to control the audio in that room could be done from your computer in the room. Again, amazing. We never would have been able to do this without this technology. From here, you could go into your matrix mixer in case you need to patch I/O to route to different places, and then your output. Your output, you could set an additional EQ. Here's where you would do your compression. If you're old school like me, 4:1, just like SSL did. And then your outputs, depending on what you need it to be.
I've
So if
played
you
with
want,
other systems that are very similar in idea, whether they
Mhm.
do it via the Dante or whether they do it otherwise. And let me tell you that the fact that having an open architecture, which some of the competitor would do, is advantageous in certain things because you can add things, you can remove things, you can ignore things that you don't want, but you're also starting with a blank slate. Having it this way makes a huge time saver for you as an installer because you know what it is that you're looking at. It's drag and
Mhm.
drop. There's not a huge learning curve for this. So there are advantages and disadvantages to both. But I think that for the great majority of what it is that we're doing here, when we're talking about conference rooms, when we're talking about board rooms, and we're talking, this is such a complete system that to overcomplicate our lives for something that's open architecture is more than likely just not necessary.
Yep, yep. This is one of
I love
those
this.
implementations of the what's it, the KISS mentality. Keep it simple, silly.
Absolutely.
So even while I'm still on this page, you could see if we were creating a blank room, obviously nothing here in the middle would be there, but everything on the left-hand side is drag and drop. So for example, if we wanted to add an additional speaker to this setup, all I had to do is go into the speaker itself here, drag it over and drop it. The system knows that I added an additional item, an additional piece of gear, and you saw the black bar on the top up here. If I click optimize, it will automatically route it to the way that it feels would be the best way um, to route it. Here, this is more of a manual setup, so I wouldn't necessarily do this. So I could just ignore it up here. And if I wanted to, I could just go from this output to here, and I literally just created my routing. If I wanted to do it differently, I could just delete the routing, and I could have it go from the main output to the input one as well. If I didn't want to have it daisy change it in that case, and it's completely up to me. It's completely up to the design. It's completely up to the needs of the client and the flow of the integrator, the way that they work.
I don't know that in this particular case, as it relates to the routing, would it technically make a difference if you did it this way that you have it on screen, or if you did it from the output of the P300? On a
If you do it
practical
from
level, it would be
if you
identical, right?
no from
Because
the practical level, no, it'll be the exact same. If you do it from the output of the P300, then we're working with you mean the analog output?
no, exactly how I'm not talking about physical. I'm talking about your routing that you've done here. Instead of doing it from the output of another speaker, you do it from the output of where all of the speakers are receiving their
Oh
signal
yeah, yeah,
from.
yeah. This would be the P300 here.
Right.
In this case, we use the IMX Room software, but this would be the P300. And no, there will be no difference going from the main output to the speaker or going from one speaker to the next. It's just, do you want to have it in series or you want to have it in parallel? That's really it.
Now, so that being the case, let's make sure that our customers understand or our dealers understand that that's not how the physical wiring is going to be. The
No.
physical wiring is all networked. We're not
Yes.
doing any series or parallel or
Yes. Yes.
powered level. No. That's
Yes. No.
all
Yeah.
wired directly to the switch. This is
Yeah.
routing. It's digital. It's totally different.
Yes, this is an internal. This is a visual representation of the matrix routing that occurs inside of the P300 or inside of the IMX Room software that we need in order to get all my microphones, all my interfaces working with my speakers and my DSP.
Right.
Yeah, no, everything physically still looks like one run straight to your switcher, and then from the switcher, whether
To
it
the network
goes
switch.
to the network switch.
Yep. That's awesome. No,
Yeah.
and again, for your physical guy, you know, for the guy who's doing the actual grunt work of wiring it all up, it becomes really easy. Dante does not require VLANs, and it does not necessarily have to be port specific, depending on how you're configuring this. So if you've got a dedicated switch for the Dante, then you don't have to do really. It's really plug and play on the networking side. If you're doing a mixed bag where you're doing Dante, you know, up with other network traffic, you still don't have to do VLANs. I generally recommend that you do, just
Mhm.
because you've got a little bit more control over the network.
And you're able
That's
to
kind of,
separate more if need be in the
and
future. If
especially if
you,
you start
yeah,
getting into Dante video too.
yeah, yeah.
So, you know, you don't want all of that network traffic crashing into one another, but that's really more of a Dante level 2 question, much more advanced than what we're doing now. Just before we wrap up, do you want to just talk about the Shure Audio Institute and what some of the further information is there? I don't know if you've got anything
I'd
visual that
love
you
to.
can
Yes.
see.
Well, first, I want everybody to have this QR code. Either scan it with your phones, take a screenshot, save it. This is the quickest and the easiest way to get into the Shure training website. From here, you're able to create your profile. Um, just real quick, what SAI is. SAI is, or Shure Audio Institute, is our free online training. From here, you're able to take all of our courses that we offer, whether you want to learn more about a certain product, you're working at a store and you need to learn about headphones, so you need to learn basics of headphones. You need to know the difference between all of our ranges of headphones. And more importantly, and for you guys, you're going to be able to take our certification courses. These certification courses are all AVIXA rated, so you do get RU credits. From here, you will be taking the different levels of certification. In this case, level 1 and level 2. We are also working on a new level 3, which is even more advanced. Level 1 is mostly for salespeople, people that are not necessarily in the nitty gritty with their hands, installing the gear, or setting it up or configuring. This is more if you want to learn our portfolio, what we offer, what each system is capable of, and to answer mostly sales questions, but in a slightly more technical aspect. Level 2 is really where you want to be if you're an installer, if you're somebody that's going to be configuring our gear, if it's somebody that you need to be able to go in and troubleshoot. In level 2, this you also get RF certification for wireless. You get Dante certification, level 1 and level 2, so you're able to kind of geek out with us the way that we've been and do and learn your routing and learn your signal flows in terms of Dante, and so you learn the flows of what each system is capable of. Um, just really quick, it's kind of like saying how many channels you're able to do in I/O, but the signal flows is it's very hardware dependent. And then from there, we also offer a new courses for certification on our STEM gear, which is our latest and greatest type of integrated systems. And you're
Which
also
we are doing
able,
a webinar in 2
we
weeks,
are, we are. And that's going to be really interesting. So we definitely invite everybody to join us for that webinar. Um,
for sure.
and then we have our third one, which would be the ecosystem. So you're able to go in and take courses and get certified in each of the gear, in the 310, the 710, the 910 designer, which is very important. And you're able to actually go in and learn each tab, each setting, and what each does. It's it's really cool.
Well, I'm excited about it, and I know that I've started doing all of my Shure certification stuffs
Yeah.
online, and we're really ecstatic about the partnership that we have with you guys. And again, It looks like we've answered all of the questions that were there.
Oh, okay.
So that's awesome. Thank you so much. And for the people who are here on with us and who are watching, thank you guys for your time.
Well,
Alex, a
again,
special thanks to you, man.
oh, it's my pleasure, sir. Again, we could stay here to talk about anything. Sure,
Audio,
I'm a
all,
fanboy. I really am.
we
It's
could.
yeah, yeah. It's one of those
We
things
won't go.
you actually get to work in a company that you've been using for at least for myself for 20 plus years in this industry, and it's very humbling to be able to be on this side, and now I'm training and showing people really why you want that Shure sound. That's cool. To me, that's cool.
It is a brand that is worth every reputation, credit that it gets. Without a doubt. And so thank you again, and thank you for all of our people who have joined in on us. You guys will be getting a follow-up email with the link to the recording if you guys want to be able to share it or watch it again yourself. And have a great day. Hope to see you in 2 weeks, where we're going to be looking at the STEM system and what the difference is between the STEM audio and the MXA system. So it's a unique ecosystem that we're excited to be able to partner up with, and we've already sold a few of those, so that's exciting as well.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
Disclaimer. Oh, quick disclaimer. Yes. English and Spanish, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next week, and then we're also going to be doing. And we're also going to be doing more for microphones and for headsets. So please stay tuned for that. Yeah, because that's something that we are just going back and forth. So you guys can get this amazing audio quality that that Nick and I are using here as well, in case you guys need to do your own presentations, your own webinars, and just keep using cool mics.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, thanks again, everybody, and stay tuned to those upcoming emails with those future webinars that exactly Alex is talking about. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Take care, y'all.